2021. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Karen,
Here. Naples, Florida.
Councilmember Gates,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Rice,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Schwartz, Councilmember Schwartz, I think you were muted.
I'm sorry. Yes, here, Dallas.
Councilmember Traver,
Here, Marshall.
Councilmember Underhill, I
He was
see he's
out.
on.
Yep.
Councilmember Underhill. Well, we know he's there. And Councilmember Wolfersberger.
Here, Marshall.
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. We will start this evening with an invocation from Richard Girton from Family Bible Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Let us pray. Dear Lord, it is always good to speak to you on behalf of others, and to seek your blessings upon us. And Lord, tonight, as this council gathers together for its meeting, we do want to recognize your goodness to us, the country we live in, and the place that we live in. Lord, we do give you thanks for that. I thank you, Lord, for those who serve us in our community, for this council, for our mayor, for the administrative staff, for those who, Lord, work behind the scenes as well, Lord, as the firemen and the policemen who put their lives on the line so often. We give you thanks for the government and the city of Marshall. Lord, as these are some trying times the last year, Lord, I think of what it tells us in Psalms 46, that you are our refuge and our strength, a very present help in the time of trouble. And Lord, we do want to remember tonight those who have lost their life due to COVID in our community, and pray for comfort upon these fellow residents here. Lord, for those, Lord, who are suffering with COVID, we would pray, God, for their healing, and the Lord, for their recovery. And the Lord, for those of us who have been fortunate enough to be inoculated or have not, Lord, been exposed to the virus, or we just pray, God, for your continued protection upon us all. Thank you, God, for our nurses and our doctors and the work that they do as well. And Lord, I would pray for this council tonight, that Lord, that they would seek your wisdom, your guidance, your help as they make the many decisions that are before them. Lord, as I looked over the agenda, I saw all the items, and Lord, I just would ask that they would look to you for guidance, and that, Lord, I know that you would give it to them. For this meeting, Lord, for all who participate in it, may it be done, Lord, with honor and respect towards one another. And we thank you, God, that we can turn to you and to seek your help. So guide what happens here tonight, and we ask these things in our Savior's name. Amen.
Thank you very much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we will start this evening with the approval of agenda, starting with public comment on agenda items, followed by the consent agenda. Under item 10A, public hearings, we have the zoning amendment, application RZ 21.01 to rezone 410 East Drive from Professional Office Service District to R2 Suburban Residential District. Under 12A, we have the Oaklawn Hospital Development Agreement, 12B, we have the bid award for audit services. 12C, we have the hydroelectric dam remediation project. 12E, we have the fiber net deficit elimination plan. 12, excuse me, that was 12D. Under 12E, we have the the electric deficit elimination plan. 12F, we have the 2021 street improvements #1 construction bids, followed by public comment on agenda items, on non-agenda items, and council and manager communications. I would like to add the MSCPA bill, which was $735,228.36 to the consent agenda, for a total of $2,411,259.28. Any additions, deletions, or comments on the agenda as amended?
I would make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
We have a motion by member Wolfersberger, support by member Schwartz. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Gates,
Yes.
member Rice,
yes,
member Schwartz,
Yes.
member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill, Brian, you were muted, I believe. Okay, member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member Underhill, you voted yes. Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you. That will move us on to item 6 on the agenda, public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the council may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes, stating your name and address for the record. Please raise your hand in order to be let in to speak. And it looks like Barry has his hand raised. He can go ahead and go first.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, well, I really don't have much to say about this part, but I'm testing this to make sure I get through because I'm doing the same thing that I did before on the second part of the last meeting, and I was not able to get through it all. So let's wait for the second part and see if I can get through.
Okay, we can hear you now, Barry. Thank you.
Would you like me to finish what I have to say? What I had to say was for the non-agenda item section, but I was testing just to make sure I can get through.
No, we're gonna wait on that until that comes up, but
Okay,
we can't hear you at this
well,
point.
I hope I can get through the next time.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments on agenda items this evening? All right, seeing and hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Item 7A, we have the Marview #2 subdivision development agreement amendment. Item 7B, we have the resolution authorizing issuance and sale of the 2021 Electric Department Fund bonds for the Perrin Dam. Item 7C, we have the resolution authorizing issuance and sale of the 2021 South Neighborhood Improvement Authority bonds. 7D, we have the city council minutes from the regular session on Monday, March 1st, 2021. 7E, we have the city bills, including the MSCPA bill totaling $2,411,259.28. Do we have any questions, additions, deletions of the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'd seek a motion to approve.
So moved. Support.
We have a motion by member Gates, support by member Wolfersberger. Any additional comments at this time? Hearing none, we will do a roll call vote, please.
Member Rice,
yes,
member Schwartz,
Yes.
member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes. Hear me? Yeah.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
and Member Gates.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. So that will move us to item 10A on the agenda, the public hearing for zoning amendment application RZ 21.01 to rezone 410 East Drive from Professional Office Service District to R2 Suburban Residential District. Tricia, could you brief us on this, please?
Sure. This request came to us from the Calhoun County Land Bank. It's the first step of the process to rezone this property for residential development. The plan for the land bank is hopefully in the near future to submit a planned unit development for this site. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this. No public was in attendance for that. They unanimously supported this. It's in line with the city's master plan, and it's definitely needed in our community, more residential development. We do have Krista Trout Edwards on the line to answer any specific questions about the site, but we are seeking approval this evening.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Krista, for joining us tonight. Is there anything you would like to add at this point?
No, I just, the rezoning that we're seeking is consistent with the surrounding area. And as Trish said, to move forward with residential development here that we've been working on for a long time, and be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you. Any questions from council members at this time? All right, then hearing none, we will go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak may do so. Please just use the raise hand function on Zoom and you will be admitted to speak. All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Is that correct, Eric?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, so seeing no hands, no comments, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council at this time? All right, so with no comments, the recommendation from the Planning Commission is to approve the rezoning request RZ 21.01 for 410 East Drive to rezone from POSD, Professional Office Service District, to R2 Suburban Residential District.
So moved.
Support.
All right, I'm sorry, I didn't see who the motion was from.
It's for me.
Thank you. So motion from member Wolfersberger, support from member Gates. We will do a roll call vote, please.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes. Oh my, yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
and Member Rice.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, excellent. Thanks again, Krista, for joining us tonight. We're excited to see something happen with this project. So hopefully we can talk about that more soon. All right, moving on to item 12A on the agenda under reports and recommendations, we have the Oaklawn Hospital Development Agreement. And Tom, would you please brief us on this item?
Yes, I'm not sure if any of you were on council at this point, but in 2013, council approved a overlay district. There was many meetings, meetings with the neighborhood working together to come up with a plan that was acceptable. One of the things in there was the creation of a neighborhood historic advisory committee. We went back and found that the action never was taken. And so at this time, even though it's 8 years later, This is something the hospital wants to start, and this would just give your support to the committee. And I'll be willing to answer any questions on that if you have any.
I have at least one. This agreement doesn't seem to benefit the city in any way. The only thing I can see, it binds the city so that we cannot get the notes or minutes from these committee meetings as part of a consideration for a building permit or anything of that nature. So I guess I'm not understanding what this does for the city.
Again, it was part of the entire negotiations that went on went on for several years. This was the neighborhood, by having 3 members on a joint committee with the hospital. They would talk through issues that came up, if there was a house to be moved, if it could be moved, it could be resold. So it's just really the last step from the adoption of the original overlay. So you are correct. It's sort of a strange agreement. Again, the hospital gets to choose who's on that committee, and then they work together as a neighborhood and the hospital. So it is a,
and it's not a binding committee.
that is correct. Just so you all know, is the hospital is moving forward. They have a house or two that is in really bad disrepair that they would like to talk with the neighborhood about what to do. And that's why this came up when I started hearing about it. Trish and I went back in the archives and resurrected this, saw that this had never been implemented. And so that's why it's in front of you today, even though it's 8 years later. It just, I think everybody was so happy when we got that overlay done that in our excitement, we just left this behind.
If I may, could you also speak to what it is the overlay does? What does it do for the? I mean, how does it change the rules, I guess?
Oh, I'm not going to be the expert to do this. I'm not sure, Tricia, if you understand the whole overlay, but it does allow with an overlay special setbacks. For example, one is, what is the front yard of the hospital? And they get into specifics. What are the setbacks? Because it is such a unique site. But the overlay is a larger document. We can get that to you. But if the hospital was to do any more development, there's limitations of what they could do on any one side. And so it's a complicated document that took, I can't remember how long it took to finally negotiate it, where there was agreement with the neighborhood and the hospital and the limitations of development. If you want to learn more, what we can do is get somebody from that era, if I could say it that way, to really a lot of Natalie worked very hard on this and with some of the neighbors. And so, I mean, if we want, we could have a presentation for you sometime in the future. I think that would be better than me stumbling along here with trying to come up with the exact points on it.
I just have a hard time voting for it when it doesn't really seem like we're a party to this as a city. This is the hospital and the neighborhood, which I realize the neighborhood's in the hospital, but the neighborhood's in the city, but it still doesn't seem like the city of Marshall is really a party to this creation of this commission or committee. And then on top of that, we don't ever get to, as the city, we don't ever get to know what the committee did.
Again, I don't know all the fine points of the negotiating. We'd have to bring in those people that were on the negotiating team. I was not. And for the reason that this was just one of the many, many pieces that was negotiated, so that this would be a committee that would work together to, if there was a need to deal with any historic structures. So it's hard to, I mean, 8 years ago, it would have been very simple because everybody had put this whole, we had huge public hearings. We actually went to the county building to take their county commission chambers, and we had hours and hours of testimony there. And this was part of the entire, this was just one of the many, many pieces of that. So if you'd like, I can gather a group to present to the council, that we're part of that negotiating.
I guess I don't, if I'm out on my own here, then that's obviously not necessary, but I'm, like I said, I just have an issue with all this from my reading, and I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in. From my reading, all this does is bind the city from being able to seek information, about their committee and what they've done, which I don't particularly care for personally, but
Tom,
you answered my question. So
Tom, has the city attorney had an opportunity to take a look at this? Because I believe he was actually on council at the time that this was going on as well.
I'm not sure who did the review. This was a document that was drawn up by the committee back in 2013. It has not been revised at all. This is, again, the original negotiated agreement that just never reached the council. David, do you have anything you want to say on this, or?
Not necessarily with the agreement. I don't recall the agreement. I just recall the being on council when the overlay district was being formed, and the public hearings that we had, and really my memory of the overlay district was trying to create almost as it sounds, an overlay to allow some of the setbacks and some of the other things to take place in the designated district, to take more of a priority than the provisions of the zoning ordinance and other things. So if I was going to study this, I'd look at the overlay district and this document, and it would probably be a good idea, Tom, for somebody who is part of the negotiation team of this agreement to provide some greater insight.
I know that, this was what was proposed 8 years ago, but I just want to make sure that that still makes sense with the direction, that we're going, if it's all still valid. And I'd probably be more comfortable if we took a little bigger look into this. I'm certainly not against it by any means, but I just want to make sure that we know, what we're agreeing to here.
We can table that, or you can table this, and I will try to gather, look back on the members. Many of the members of that committee are no longer in the community. So I know the chair has passed away, and so we'd have to take a look who is still left that was on that committee. Councilmember Metzger was on that, so she would be probably one of the people that I would go to. But if you feel uncomfortable doing this tonight, we can bring this back. I know the hospital is talking with neighbors. They're going to have the 3 members are going to be somewhat geographically around the hospital, so they're not all right next door to each other. And they're anybody who's interested, then they're going to be randomly picked from those people that apply. So I know that much is going on. So, Tricia?
From the research that I've done and just serving as clerk during that time, I don't think it's an agreement so much to benefit the city by any means. It was to appease the neighborhood, to ensure that the hospital couldn't go in and just buy up homes and tear them down for their own purpose, that the neighborhood would be involved and have a say in those actions. So I think it was more just to ensure that they had some participation in that.
Mr. Mayor, former Mayor Dyer's got his hands up. If you would allow him to talk.
Yes, please do.
He'd be a good one. That's how I remember it too. I was on council at the beginning of those discussions. They went on for a long time, so I wasn't still on when it concluded. But it was to set that perimeter so that the hospital couldn't just buy up a whole block and expand. They had to allow for the community to be part of it, the neighborhood to be part of it, if they were able ever to expand beyond that parameter. But the lines, the district that was set kind of gave them a little more liberty to work within those parameters. And then I think they even set restrictions on height and signage and lighting and all that too. But I think Mr. Dyer will be a great one to chime in.
Well, I can help a little bit perhaps. Certainly I was there when it was all taking place and had considerable involvement in it, but I can say this much: the overlay district itself is primarily, it's a mechanism used in a zoning ordinance to permit the extension of certain zoning benefits that would not otherwise be available within the particular zone that a property is in, if it's used for a particular type of purpose. The best way to think of it, it is a predetermined special use permit. That's probably the best way to look at it, because the overlay district encompasses areas that are both zoned as residential and both zoned as healthcare human services district. So in particular, residential property can be used for a hospital purpose under certain conditions that are predefined in the overlay district. So that's really what the overlay district does. What I had an opportunity to take a look at this agreement that is on your agenda, and that is not something that was, I believe that's of a more recent development. It's not something that was negotiated back at the time that the Healthcare and Human Services Overlay District was adopted. But it does assist in the purpose of that. And what it really does, from my perspective, is it really limits and defines what Oaklawn must do if there are certain things that, for example, it talks about what Oaklawn must do to address historic structures that it deems, for whatever reason, should be moved. And that was one of the major issues in the discussion 8 years ago when the overlay district was adopted, is what do we do if there's a point in time when Oaklawn may need to use property that is within the overlay district, zoned residential, and has a structure on it that might need to be moved or destroyed, frankly. And it sets out this agreement, as I see it, sets out a process of things that Oaklawn is committed to do that it frankly doesn't otherwise have to do as a property owner. But it is binding Oaklawn to do certain things that they, as a good neighbor, would do to convince the neighborhood that they're doing something appropriate with their own property. So in the sense that the agreement doesn't do anything for the city, it does, to the extent it limits those things that Oaklawn might otherwise be able to do as a property owner that it's not required to do now, absent that agreement. So from my perspective, this agreement would definitely implement what was supposed to have occurred in the at the time the overlay district was adopted, and it would certainly implement the intent and frankly the purpose of that district. I don't know if that's of any help, or if there's any other questions that any of the council members may have about what was going on back then. As Tom described it, this was a process that it began before I became mayor and ended in the second term of my time as mayor. So it took well over 3.5, 4 years for it to be completed.
All right, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that, information. That's certainly helpful since it's not something that we've, dealt with in quite a long time. Does anyone have any questions at this point for Jim or?
Just one question that just came up then. By moving forward with this, does that hinder the city? Say they have an agreement with the neighborhood and Oak Lawn, they bring it before the city. That can't supersede current laws on the books, or if they're meeting what's required, do you have to go with binding by passing this, or because if we as a council say, hey, they meet all the requirements for demolition, but the overlay comes back and says, no, we said no, what would that do to the city? These are some of the questions that maybe I have at this moment.
Yeah, on that point, I mean, if this is something new that the city attorney hasn't reviewed, then I would have a different concern.
I'm not sure when this, back in 2013, 2014, if this document was reviewed by the city attorney at that time. I know he was involved, but this is not a new document. This is something we dug out of the books, the binders of information we have. But to maybe answer Councilmember Schwartz's question is, without this, the hospital does not need to talk to the neighborhood. If they own a building, they can do whatever they want, whenever they want. This document gives them process to work with the neighbors to come up with hopefully an agreement that would be good for both parties. So as I think as Mr. Dyer mentioned, this is really something that is, I brought it to the hospital's attention that this had not been taken care of. And if they would have moved forward, they could have done a lot of things without even talking to their neighbors. And that was not the idea when this was going on. I know, Jim, you sat through those same meetings I did at the county commission chambers. And so it's, that's why, I bring it to you at this time, is because they are talking of doing some things, and I just feel the neighborhood needs to be involved.
Just one last point of clarification, if I may, is so this, the provisions in this document are not laid out in the overlay district itself. They're not under any limitations for raising structures or anything if this is not in place.
Correct.
Gotcha.
All right, any additional questions at this time? All right, hearing none, the recommendation is to authorize the city clerk to sign the development agreement with Oak Lawn Hospital.
Mr. Mayor, would this be the time where I make a motion to table this till we get a review by city attorney for current?
Yes.
I'd like to make that motion if I could.
All right, we have a motion by member Schwartz. Support from member Wolfersberger. And we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member Rice,
Yes.
and Member Schwartz.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda, we have item 12B, the bid award for audit services. Tom?
Yes, thank you. It's standard practice in governmental units to, I won't say rotate, but change auditors, anywhere from 5 to 7 years. And that's been the standard practice for the city of Marshall. Our former auditors who presented the last 5-6 years, Gaybridge and Company, has been our auditors since 2015. So we went out for proposals and we received 6 proposals back from some very large, well-known firms. And we are recommending that the audit services for the next 6 years be given to Manor Costerson out of Lansing.
Tom, is it pretty standard to do such a long contract for audit services? It just only makes me nervous because it's the first year that we're utilizing this company, and that's kind of a long commitment.
This is very standard. I know the Michigan South Central Power Agency that I chair, we are going through the same process right now. And it just, this is very standard. When we hired Gaybridge, of course, in 2015, previous to that, we had, they were Riemann Robson at the time, but now they're just Riemann. So, but this is standard.
All right, any other questions at this time regarding the audit services? All right, hearing none, the recommendation is to accept the proposal from Manor Costerian of Lansing for the amount of $28,500 for fiscal year 2021 and accept the contract for a term of 6 years for the audit periods ending in June 30, 2021 through June 30, 2026.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion by Member Underhill, support by Member Schwartz, and we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member Rice,
Yes.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
and Member Underhill.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That takes us to item 12C, the hydroelectric dam remediation project. I'm going to ask Ed to brief us on this, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Good evening.
Yeah, this has been a long and arduous process too that we've gone through to get to the recommendation this evening. I also have Dennis Zabel from Lawson Fisher, our consulting engineer, should be also available in case there's any real technical questions come up on the contract that's going to be awarded for the reconstruction of the Marshall Dam. But just a little bit of history, and I'm not going to read this whole diatribe that I put together, but I put it together with the intent that it might be good reading for some of the newer council members to really understand what the history of the dam is. And again, the dam was constructed in the 1880s for a narrow gauge railroad crossing across the Kalamazoo River. Subsequently, 10-15 years later, generators were installed as part of rather than spill the water, they generate electricity, and the city purchased those generators I think in the 1890s. So it's been a long standing. Again, it's really not a what would be called an approved dam in today's standards. It was an old railroad grade that was just to block the water from flowing downstream so that the railroad could get across. Then in the 1930s, after several dam failures across the country, the federal government developed the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and charged them with oversight and responsibility for oversight and, I guess, control of the operation of those hydroelectric facilities because of the significant loss of life, particularly in New York and other places because of dam failures. And I think you're all aware that just recently Michigan's had a dam failure up in the Midland area. I think there are two or three dams washed out up there, and it's under a lot of review right now. It's been just perking along for 120 some years. And then in 2012, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission changed the status of the dam, our dam, the Marshall Dam, from a significant hazard to a high hazard because it was leaking. And it's got low spots in the dam that under a significant flood would overtop the dam and wash it out. And also there was significant tree growth on the dam, which we took off in last year, 2020. But still, you just don't cut trees down because it leaves a root system underneath the ground that could cause a washout after a period of time. So in 2015, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they said we need a plan and a process to bring the dam up to current standards. And we've been working on that for the last 6 years. And every time we think we've got a solution to it, something comes up that surprises us, that causes us to change our direction. We're also trying to coordinate with not only Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, who has oversight over the facility, but also Eagle, because of the impoundment. And a major issue we run into was a contaminated sediment that's above the dam. Originally, we thought we would just drive some sheet piling or just let the water down and fix the dam. And then after some testing of the sediment, it was determined it was significantly contaminated, and the Eagle indicated that we're exempt as long as it stays in place, but as soon as it's disturbed, the city could be liable for any downstream remediate cleanup on a release of the sediment. So we went through a lot of trials, and I'll call them tribulations. So like I said, for 6 years, and we finally got to a point at this point where we've got, we went out for bids for a construction contractor to basically take the root balls from the trees out of there, increase the height of the dam, and do some adjustments on the concrete abutments to the dam. So tonight, we're asking the city council to approve the selection of Mead Brothers out of Springport, Michigan, who was went out for bids, got 6 responses, and Mead Brothers and Lawson Fisher did a good job of vetting Mead Brothers to make sure that they were capable of taking on a project like this, because it's a significant one for the city, and determined that they were. And we worked closely with Lawson Fisher in that process and the whole engineering process as this is developed. So our recommendation is to award a construction contract for remediation of the dam to Mead Brothers of Springport, Michigan, in the amount of $1,509,000 at $938, with a contingency of another 15%, $226,500, just in case we run into some difficulties in the process. So it's FERC is anxious to get this fixed, as we are. Again, it's a hydroelectric facility, generates renewable energy, also supports our community with the generation that comes off the dam, does go into the city distribution grid, and at a pretty reasonable, at really a no cost, as long as we aren't spending this type of money on it. But this is the license does expire in 2035, so somewhere down the road, someone's going to have to, and council is going to have to make a decision whether they want to continue to generate hydroelectric electricity there, because to renew the license will be $500,000 plus to do that in 2035. So, but tonight, we'd recommend that you approve the Mead Brothers construction contract. And again, Dennis Zabel's on from Lawson Fisher. In case you have any specific questions of a technical nature, he's the expert.
All right, thank you, Ed. Any questions for Ed or Dennis at this time from council?
Did Mead Brothers provide a timeline for start and finish?
Yes, I'll let Dennis answer that. We developed the timeline really, and they agreed to it. But Dennis, please.
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this is Dennis. I'm the project manager for Lawson Fisher Associates. As Ed said, when we went into the project, we gave the contractor a schedule he had to live by. We've actually got a sequence of construction laid out for him, and they're given 7 months to substantially complete the project. So that means all the major work has to be completed, things like cleanup, access road removal, stuff like that. They've got another 30 days. So if we get started here in April, we should be done by November, before the cold weather hits. And yes, I thoroughly talked with Mead Brothers, and they hope to beat that 7-month schedule.
Excellent, thank you.
Ed, I have a question for you. I know obviously we've been working on this for a long time and have gotten, funding lined up for it, and we're far along in the process. But I know with the big Midland dam disaster, that there has been ongoing assessments of, dams and that type of infrastructure in the state. And I'm just wondering if you've heard of anything about funds being allocated for that, additional grants that, even though we're in process, might be available to us.
I'll let Dennis chime in here also, but all through this process, we were looking for grants, talking to the state, getting them involved in it. And there was grants for removal, but there was not very much, there wasn't anything, hardly anything available for repairs or maintenance of them. The state really is pushing dam removals. It'd be very difficult for Marshall to do because of the sediment issue upstream. It would be when we did analyze that, it would be anywhere from $20 to $60 million for sediment remediation if we were to remove the dam.
There were no $60 million grants, I take it.
No, it might be a couple 100,000.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis, did you want
Yeah,
to?
I agree, Ed. I've been working on dams for 30 years, and over that period, this question comes up on every dam project I work on, and there's really never been funding, especially for public, and private. States sometimes get grants through FEMA for some items, but there's just very little grant money out there.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions at this time? All right, hearing none, just to reiterate, the recommendation is to approve awarding the construction contract for the FERC-required remediation of the City of Marshall's Perrin Dam to the low and qualified bidder, Mead Brothers Excavating of Springport, Michigan, in the amount of $1,509,938 with a $226,500 15% contingency, and authorize the city clerk to sign the contract.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion by member Gates and support by member Rice. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member Gates,
Yes.
member Rice,
Yes.
member Schwartz,
Yes.
member Traver.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 12D on the agenda this evening, the FiberNet Deficit Elimination Plan. And ask Tom and Karen to brief us on this, please.
Sure. In front of you, you have a report and a plan. I want to thank Karen for doing a lot of work on this and coming up with ideas. I'll be repeating that again when we get to the next one. We are in the third year. We have 2 more years left in the plan. We have become cash positive, and the state looks at that. We are also going to be wanting to discuss with you, hopefully in April, a plan to pay the debt off that we have done the interdepartmental loans. And we'll get into more detail at that, but I'm going to let Karen, because she's the financial expert, just explain some of the highlights of, I won't say her plan, our plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight, the deficit elimination plan that we'd like to submit to the state for the FiberNet is actually attached in a spreadsheet as part of the agenda item. And I'd like to just quickly talk about, there's 2 different ways we can satisfy the state's requirement for the FiberNet fund with respect to a deficit elimination plan for an enterprise fund. So these are the funds that are a full accrual basis of accounting and a little bit different accounting than the general fund. And the way that we can do that, we have 2 different kind of squares on the Excel sheet. The first one is an income statement. It looks at revenue, it looks at expenditures, and it looks at, have we improved our unrestricted net position deficit year over year as time goes on. And you can see at the end of this year, we're projecting a deficit of $4.4 million. Then the following year, 4.1 million, and then 3.8 million. So we don't satisfy getting out of the deficit by our little top box there. The way that we satisfy it is by the second box, which is current assets minus current liabilities. So what the state is saying is if you have more current assets, which is cash, investments, accounts receivable, and you subtract out your current liabilities, which is accounts payable and a few other things, are you cash positive? And by the end of actually next year, we are projecting to be cash positive in the FiberNet fund, primarily due to the fact that the City Council raised rates for residential customers by 10% in January of 2021. And that allowed us to have the revenue that we needed to sustain our expenditure levels. And also staff has gone through and looked at expenditures and made sure that we were appropriately cutting where we needed to. So this plan should be accepted by the state of Michigan, and they'll be pleased that we're going to pull ourselves out of this deficit within the next 2 years.
Thank you, Karen. Does anyone have any questions for Karen at this time regarding the FiberNet deficit elimination plan?
I do have. In 2022, we're expecting salaries and supplies and contractor expenses to go down.
So we cut some things from the budget to make sure that we were adequately addressing both, there's 2 sides to it. So one is the revenue increase, but also that we look at expenditures and we make sure that we're appropriately reducing our expenditures to make this plan work. So Ed went through that with Tom and I, and we looked at ways to look at reducing those expenditures.
Okay, so are we eliminating a person in 2022?
Ed, do you want to speak to that? It was really allocations, wasn't it?
Well, in this particular one, it was the system's pretty well built out now. So we aren't going to have as much construction activity, contractors on, and it's pretty well stabilized also. So our needs really for our, our level 3 tier support, which is contracted, is going to be diminished. So we have to reduce those expenditures that were really that going outside. They're not embedded costs other than they're contracted costs that we plan to reduce.
And salary and fringes, Ed, you had originally planned on some higher costs this year, and it looks like you've kind of right-sized it for next year. In the budget, it went down about 21,000, and I thought you had reallocated some staff and took a look at what you needed there.
Right. We had a FiberNet, almost a fully dedicated, while all the calls were coming in, clerical support. That person left and went to another job and was not replaced.
Great, thank you.
All right, does anyone have any additional questions at this time? All right, thank you, Karen. Seeing none, the recommendation is to approve the deficit elimination for the FiberNet Fund and direct the Finance Department to file the plan with the Michigan Department of Treasury.
So moved.
Or
We have a motion by member Gates, support by member Underhill.
That wasn't me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Is that member Wolfersberger?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. So the motion by member Wolfersberger, support by member Underhill. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Gates,
Yes.
member Rice,
Yes.
member Schwartz,
Yes.
member Traver,
yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
and Mayor Karen.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 12E, the electric deficit elimination plan. We'll turn it back over to Tom and Karen.
This was absolutely the tougher one of the two. With Karen working with us, we retained several years ago Courtney Associates to look at our rates. At that time, we took a pause because we were optimistic that the inflationary increases that are occurring would be covered by load growth. We looked at that, and the load growth didn't come in the time that we thought. And so we re-engaged John Courtney back in November to continue his cost of service study and his rate study. There was many meetings between city staff and Karen and Courtney Associates, John and Scott there, to come up with a plan. I think at this point, maybe I'm going to let Karen talk about numbers, and then I'll jump back in on the end.
Sure. So as Tom mentioned, the real issue is some of the projections that we had planned on did not come to fruition, and the normal inflationary rate increases we would have done did not happen because we thought some other things were going to evolve with various customers. And so where we are now, 7 years later, since a rate increase, we need a significant rate increase in order to make this plan work. And even with, I talked previously about there's two different methodologies. There's this net income basis, revenues, expenditures, or there's current assets minus current liabilities. And in the case of the electric fund, both methods do not have us getting out of our deficit elimination plan until the 5th year. And that is with a 21% rate increase as projected by John Courtney and Associates, their group, given our deficit that we have to eliminate. We have a further complication that FiberNet owes the electric fund a significant advance for the construction of the FiberNet fund, $1.7 million. And as Tom alluded to earlier, we'd like to bring back to the board or to the council next month. We'd like to take a look at how we can get all those advances paid back. That would help the electric fund get not only become solvent, but to have money set aside for future capital needs, which is very, very important. So on, I think, page 60 of the packet, you'll see that by year 5, with the rate increase, we're able to satisfy the state's requirement under both types of plans and resolve our deficit. If we do not do the rate increase, we will not be able to satisfy the state in this matter.
And what we'd like to do is in April, find a time where we can bring both of these to a work session where we could have some quality time, have John Courtney present. And what he can do is he can show, if you didn't want to do it all in 1 year, you wanted to do it over 2 years, the effects that would occur. And then at that time, give us direction of how you would like to proceed with an actual rate increase. The other thing that, and not trying to be optimistic again, we have been told, by our large users, there is more load coming. It's just that it's been so delayed over the last 4 years that it's hard to trust them in their load projections. So if the load occurs, there'll be a lot more revenue over expenditures. But again, we won't know that for sure for a while. But so what we'd like to do is figure a time in April, either at your April 19th council meeting or a special time to really look at what is the final structure, because you have 3 on electric rates, which is a little different than water like you dealt with in a couple months ago, is you have your customer charge, you have your power cost adder, and you have your energy charge. And so you can decide where would be the best place to do that. And John can show you doing a live simulation, if you want to do one thing or another and how it would affect different people. So again, tonight, we do need to get this submitted to the state. If we do not submit our plans, they have told us that they will hold, Department of Treasury will hold some of our revenue sharing monies that come into the city. So this took a little longer than we anticipated because Courtney was doing their work. We would have had this to you a month, or I think it was the first thing I mentioned to Karen when she was hired to that we have to move on. And if you're in my office, you'll see a big red star by this. We have to. I mean, this is something we really need to take care of. So no one wants to hear this, I know, but again, our optimism didn't pay off. So I just wanted to have that there, is that our load growth didn't occur like we had thought.
Tom, if I may add, I did talk to the Michigan Department of Treasury, and they will require, when we send both of these, a certified resolution, they will require proof that we raised our FiberNet rates, which we've already done, but also they will not accept our plan until we have shown them proof that we have raised our electric rates. So they told me it was highly probable they will withhold 25% of our April state shared revenue payment, which is about $28,000. They will give that to the city as soon as they have accepted and approved our deficit elimination plan. So as soon as we can get John Courtney and Associates to the council to discuss that, that would be an expeditious thing to do.
And Karen, you're saying that, we're talking about a 21% increase here, and Tom maybe had mentioned this could be split up over the next 2 years of this deficit elimination. If we were to choose to do, say 11 and, the additional the following year, is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that gives us the time. You can see we can't really get out of it by year 5 on that deficit elimination plan. So the state treasury is not going to care whether we split it up a little bit, as long as by the end of year 5 we are showing positive results. They'll be pleased with that.
Yeah, we'd like to show you the effect again, like I mentioned, is letting John and Scott present and actually have that Excel spreadsheet there where if you think you want to do 12 and 10 and 11 and 11, I mean, you can see what how it works. then you can give us that guidance and then we can actually get it into resolution form for adoption.
I have a question or two. So if we go to this increase, is 21%, that's also going to be applied to our growers and those that have a contract? That's first question.
Sure. Good question, Jim. Right now, one of our growers has a contract with us, but it has not started because they have not reached their load. That's the starting point in the contract. So that one grower with their large usage, that rate increase would not be charged to them, but we'd be making more money as they use more power. The rate would be not changed.
So we're going to do 21% on everybody else, but we're not going to do it to them. What is their current rate? Do we know?
Right now, Ed, can you help me? What is the current rate? They're paying 10 point.
Yeah, a little over 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Okay. So if we go to a 21% increase, theirs does not increase at all over the term of the whole contract, even though they're not even meeting what they require to?
Once they get over 2 megawatts, then the contract rate would start. And as long as they stay above the 2 megawatts, then that rate would, that lower rate would occur.
So if they're not there now, now's the time to add the 21% because they're not meeting the contract. Or am I not thinking this right?
Here, they would pay more now, but once they meet the 2 megawatts, then they would go to the contracted rate.
Well, why wouldn't we just rescind the contract because they're not there and renegotiate the contract? I don't want taxpayers to fund, again, we're putting everything on the back of the taxpayers, and 21%, I can't fathom doing this. I just don't understand. We were in a position, and I know things didn't happen the way they do, but we're already in year 4 and 5 to fix this. I don't know when we could have seen this sooner. So we could have done it in increases of 4, 5% even. But even if we do it at 11% and 10%, especially during these times, it's just so difficult. I thank you for answering that, Tom. Second thing is on expenditures.
Jim, maybe Jim, I'd like to answer your question because is sure you have a contract with them, and I can't remember if it's for 5 or 10 years. We couldn't go to them through our city attorney and see if we can break that contract. Now, what that does for future development is another story that we would have to weigh, because they could say okay, we are not going to expand anymore, and and now only do $10 million of investment rather than the 100 million. So that's one of the pieces that we could discuss with them. So I wanted to say is we could see if we can break the contract, and I'm not ashamed to go into them. Actually, I have a meeting with them next week.
Well, it's just that they haven't met anything. Doesn't sound like, and this has been going on for years. And this is kind of what brought us into this, with expectations and the city buying the equipment to fulfill those expectations and not being met. And now we're looking at me as a homeowner to supplant that shortfall. And it just, I don't understand that. So we're looking at a 21% increase on the expenditure side. What are we doing to cut to meet that instead of raising rates? What are we doing differently there?
Sure. Ed is also here. He can talk a little bit about that, but the largest cost for Ed is purchase power. So obviously he can't really control that. He has taken a look at salaries and fringes and some other areas, and we've reduced wherever we can. In addition, we charge the electric fund for our overhead costs, and that goes back to the general fund. We've reduced that by $200,000 for the next next coming year. So we're trying to look at ways we can reduce costs. So overall, we did $150,000 expenditure reduction from fiscal 21 to fiscal 22. Ed, do you want to add anything else?
No, I mean, we kind of, the state's got some very, very rigid rules when we do these deficit elimination plans. They will not, for instance, if anybody went down by the Cresco plant, that's not in service yet, so it's not producing any revenues. The new transformers are energized, as I've given in the weekly updates, and they're ready to go. And we expect them to really start ramping up in May. And just from the equipment they've installed down there, they're gonna have significant revenue, add significant revenues to the electric fund. But the state won't accept that. They want the tried and proven. If it's zero right now, that's all we can put into the deficit elimination plan until they actually can, they actually start changing their load and their revenues to us. So it's it's really tough on us. We think that we didn't spend a lot of money on Cresco. We spent some money on $500,000 on MPM, getting them set up for what they have right now, basically. And we did do the Pearl Street substation, which if you're going to add all this load, then you need substation. So it's kind of been a difficult process for us. Do you wait until the actual load develops before you increase the capacity of a substation? That just won't work. You've basically got to tell your customers, sorry, we can't provide service to you. You got to go someplace else.
And I completely understand that, Ed. With the idea of when there was projection of coming online and doing that, we also spent the money to make sure we had that, but yet they're still way behind. And so that some of that cost could have been defrayed and we could have done better in planning. And I saw your projections for 2021 and what the actual bringing in is not very good. So I do understand that. So we're also looking at 200,000 less going to general fund through this process. Is that what I heard you say, Karen?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I do want to say I echo Jim's concern. I mean, that's 21% is a big hike for families. It's a very regressive cost. Everybody needs electricity. They can't help it. And it's just, yeah, I find it very concerning to put that kind of cost on families. I mean, I trust that we've left no stone unturned to try and find a different solution, but I hope that we'll continue trying to find a different solution, because that's going to be difficult for a lot of people.
So what are the opportunities? So if some of these grows in different places come online and start to live up within the next 2 years, and we see that revenue, is that a way for us maybe year 2 of this increase to decrease what we need, because we can reevaluate at that time where we're at financially?
Absolutely. For instance, Cresco is planning to come on May or June. So when we visit this plan next year, if Cresco has come on board, we can actually show their revenue in this program, in the plan. So the potential may be there that I'm just going to pick numbers. Say we did 11 and 10 or something like this. It may be 11 and 4. But again, I don't want anybody to trust in those numbers. But there's no question that we know Cresco is coming on board. And again, this analysis shows none of Cresco.
And you can just confirm, Tom, that this action tonight on the deficit elimination plan obviously is not approving a certain increase in the electric rates at this point. That's something that we'll be doing down the road.
Absolutely correct. That's something we just need to figure out a time that works for the council members in April to have that work session. I know you already have 2 days of work sessions coming up on Friday and Saturday in April. I don't know how much to push you all, but it would be great if we could find a time. I know this is also spring break, Easter. Find a time where we can have Karen and John Courtney together to present this, and then you can ask those questions of the what are the alternatives. So I'd like to probably, again, I don't know all your schedules, so I know Karen does have a commitment already, so we'll have to work around some dates.
Okay, thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, may I? But I think, didn't Karen say we have to submit this plan, which shows a 21% increase? The state will require us to show that we are going to raise rates to 21% based on this debt elimination, but we haven't even talked about raising rates at this point. I don't know how we can submit this if we don't. They're only going to withhold the money. They're not going to keep the money until we have something. Isn't there something that maybe in a special meeting take place so we can answer some of these other questions about the contracts? And I don't know. 21% just, I can't agree to that. I don't know what our other options are. It's just my thinking.
So you can certainly not approve this item tonight. The state will withhold our state shared revenue for each payment every 2 months. So they'll withhold $28,000 from the April payment, from the June payment, so on and such forth, which affects the general fund. It does not affect the electric fund. And then what will happen is when we submit a plan that's satisfactory to Treasury, then they will refund that money to us. So that it's not a like punitive where they keep it forever. They're just holding it back as an incentive for us to make sure we do what we're supposed to do.
Right, it's withholding, not, we don't lose the funds, they just withhold that.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so then,
If
go
I
ahead,
could
Skip.
real quick, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I guess I just want to get a feel for how binding this is. You know, if we identify actions in May or June that that could be an alternative to this, or could we reduce the rates if we so chose to, if the deficit were eliminated in another fashion?
So the short answer is yes, if we came up with something better, but I'm not sure what that would be, right? After discussions with Ed and
don't either, but
and Tom and everyone, and talking to Courtney and Associates, because really our biggest cost of purchase power is not one we can control. If we could just lop $1 million off of it and call it a day, that'd be great, but we can't. So we're really left with a majority of our costs we can't control, and then the remaining cost, we've kind of scoured through and taken a look at that. It is entirely possible the state won't like this plan either, because it does show a big jump in commercial sales for marijuana, and it's entirely possible they think that is too optimistic, because they've received our last two plans, which had a lot of optimism there in that arena, and now they might be all done with that story from us. So it is definitely worth the council taking the time to look at it, and if they want to have Courtney and Associates go through that model, and maybe we can look at a couple different things, we can certainly postpone this.
On that point, because industrial sales is separate from the marijuana sales, what is driving the 50% increase in industrial sales between 2021 and 2022?
I think what we had classified in our budget for fiscal 21 is not how Courtney and Associates classified things. So it's not necessarily that that went up or that is going to go up, 50% or whatever it might be. It's that we have a classification between different things. We have classification differences between the two. So the very first column where it says fiscal 21, that is an estimate of or what was budgeted for fiscal 21, except I took commercial sales for marijuana down quite a bit. And then Courtney and Associates is in the studies for the 4th and 5th years.
The other thing that is reflected here in 21 is COVID. A lot of our industries were shut down. You figure this started July 1 to the present. And so, now, for example, Tenneco was shut down for quite a while. They are working 24/7. I mean, they're running full bore there. But again, that's why you see this little drop there. It's because a lot of the industry was shut down for those COVID months.
That's a good point, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions at this point? It sounds as if I'm assuming that everyone would be more comfortable with either tabling this until the next meeting after we can get together in a work session. And if that's the case, how everyone's feeling, I'd entertain a motion to do so.
So move.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by member Traver and support by member Rice to table this until we can get together with Courtney Associates and Karen to talk about the different options, understanding that this needs to be submitted as soon as possible because the Treasury will be withholding funds from us at this time. So we will do a roll call vote, please.
Member Schwartz,
Yes.
member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yeah.
member Wolfersberger,
No.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member Gates,
Yes.
and member Rice.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. So Tom, if we can, figure out when we can all get together to coordinate that as soon as possible, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'll be getting something out to you. I'll just have to look at some schedules, but we'll get out to all of you to, but that'll be an in-person meeting, so that we'll need to keep that in mind when you're looking at your schedule. So.
All right, thank you. So that'll move us on to item 12F on the agenda, the 2021 street improvement on number 1 construction bids. And I'm going to ask Marguerite to brief us on this item, please.
I'm going to step in first because I'll let Marguerite take. This is something good. So we've had tough discussion here a few minutes ago. So Marguerite's going to bring you the good news here. So go ahead, Marguerite.
Thank you. As you know, in November, voters approved road improvement bond proposal, street improvement bond proposal. And we've been working on the plans for that construction most of the winter. We have proposed in this contract to mill and pay 5 miles of streets. The map and the bid tab didn't make it into the packet, but they were sent to you today in a separate email. I can show those on the screen if you didn't have a chance to look at them. But we received bids from 4 contractors, and Michigan Paving and Materials was the lowest contractor. I did reach out to a couple of their references, all returned favorable results. Both MDOT, I talked to construction personnel at MDOT, and also a couple other cities. So this is the first of 2 projects for sure this year, and several projects over the next this year and the 2 years following that. So our bonds are going to be sold. We actually had our rating meeting today, which was an interesting experience. So we are going out to a competitive bid on the bonds, and hopefully we're expecting to return a favorable rate on that. And so now we need to award the contract. So as I mentioned, this is for 5 miles of mill and pave throughout town, including curb and gutter repair as needed, ADA sidewalk ramps installation as needed, some minor storm repairs, and then all the ancillary work that goes with actual paving, the structures in the road and things like that. So we are asking for approval of the contract in the amount of $951,143 with an additional contingency of $98,857. That was right around 10%, for a total funded amount of $1,050,000.
For a motion, Marguerite, there's 2 different numbers, one in the recommendation and one in the table. There's $2,000 difference. I don't know if you have your bid tab handy there.
It's $953,143. Thank you. So the table is wrong. The recommendation is correct.
No.
No.
It's the other way.
Correct. The table is correct. The recommendation is wrong. $953,143 is the contract amount.
Marguerite, thank you for putting this together. One thing I wanted to ask about was, I know that we're going to be looking at the ADA compliant sidewalk ramps and then some additional gutter and curb work where is needed. How would we be able to tie in any areas of the sidewalk that are of concern in these same areas? It just seems that this would be the appropriate time to take care of some of those things.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have identified a very small amount of sidewalk along the street to be repaired. We still have about, I think it's about $10,000 in a contract outstanding from last fall that we didn't get done in time for sidewalk repair. That needs to get done first thing this spring. So I was pretty conservative on the sidewalk repairs, to be honest. You know, being the first year of spending the bond funds and trying to make sure that we get the streets done with a focus. However, we did keep an eye out and identify like real bad sidewalk, like lips, you know, a couple inch lips and things like that.
Sure.
So there's a little bit in there. I'm sorry, I don't know that amount off the top of my head. We can always add more as we go. I do think that we got favorable pricing. My estimate was just under 1.2 million. So I was pleased with the bids. We did get $60 per ton paving or asphalt price, which is very competitive. So we can, on this contract, add things, or we can keep it in mind for next year.
Sure. I appreciate that, just knowing that you did have that in mind as we were going through and taking a look at this. I understand that, you know, I would like to get the ones taken care of that, of course, are you know, in need of repair, and to make sure that they're safe. And then we can continue to kind of grade those as we go around and have a good idea of what needs to be done. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Marguerite, what is the rough schedule for this project?
We will have construction start as soon as possible. We do have work that we have coordinated with consumers, gas main replacement, And we swapped some streets around on the overall plan to coordinate with their replacement schedules. But this year, the area of Grant Court, Allcat, and Hobart is going to be late fall. They will not be able to start that until August. And then I think that I feel like there was one other street that's grouped in with that. Otherwise, we'll have the contractor start early this spring. Hopefully finish by midsummer. I would like to have a lot of this major paving done before the small urban project comes in, which isn't shown on the map, but is Mansion Street from Madison to East, and then East, all of East Drive and all of North Drive from Madison to East. Well, not all of North Drive, but North Drive from Madison to East. So that's a big chunk of road in the north east section of town. And so I'd like to have a lot of other stuff done prior to that, construction starting in July. That was a long-winded answer. I apologize.
It was long-winded, but it's nice to hear that we're making so much progress with the roads, because we know that that's certainly something that will benefit the community. Any additional questions this time for Marguerite regarding the street improvements #1 construction bids? All right, seeing none, the recommendation is to accept the bid from Michigan Paving and Materials of Jackson for the 2021 street improvements #1 in the amount of $953,143 with an additional contingency of $98,857 for a total funded amount of $1,050,000.
So moved.
Support. Actually, you didn't add it. It's 52,000. 1,052,000. Sorry.
Is that correct? I don't have the calculator in front of me, but.
That is correct. I checked it.
All right, thank you.
Adding the 2,000 to the bid, it changes it to 1,052,000.
Thank you. So seek a motion. Was it Member Rice?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And the support from Member Underhill? We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
Member Gates,
Yes.
Member Rice,
Yes.
and Member Schwartz.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Excellent, thank you. That brings us to public comment on non-agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the council may do so by giving their name and address for the record and have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Please use the raise hand function if you would like to speak. We will start out this evening with Barry Wayne Adams.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, well, last time, amazingly, between the first comment section and the second comment section, I was trying to load information onto the chat portion of the Zoom program, Zoom software, and while I was doing it 3 times, the tab crashed, erasing all of the information that I had put into the chat room. And then when it came time for the public comment to come on, I unmuted it on my end, but you guys did not hear anything. And I checked my microphone internally on the computer and it was working fine. So these kind of strange things happen. And when they do, it belies the fact that this is really a public hearing. None of these Zoom meetings comply with the open meetings, the mandates of the Open Meetings Act. Okay, this is not meant to be a personal attack on anyone, but it is meant to be constructive criticism. 2 meetings ago, I tried to provide some information and before anyone really had a chance to review it, one of the council members came out and said that they prefer to rely on certain public officials, epidemiologists, without even reviewing the information that I had placed onto the internet. It was Albert Einstein that said, condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. And what I'm trying to instill here is the spirit of critical thinking rather than the spirit of virtuous signaling and sanctimonious posturing by rubber stamping whatever a government official says. In fact, that is not critical thinking. That's the opposite of critical thinking. That's actually called logical fallacy, and it's reliance on authority. And just because an authority says something, that doesn't mean it's true. Okay, on the question and answer thing, I put several websites showing that there are credible sources of information that dispute the efficacy of the mask wearing mandates, and statistical analysis of those of the mask mandate regions show that the surges came shortly after, one after another. And I also put websites on there from the CDC and the European CDC, in which their own internal documents say that mask wearing is ineffective or of negligible consequence. Also, I put several other websites, and I'd like you to check out 2 of the PDF files that I put on there. One is Medical Nemesis by Ivan Illich, a intensely researched and footnoted analysis of Western medical system and public health procedures. And as you'll find, in spite of what government tries to do with epidemics, they pretty much run their course indifferent to what humans try to do. I also provided several other websites that show by independent analysts who are outside of the CDC perceptual bubble.
Here you have 30 seconds left. I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay. Well, one quick thing to announce that there must be no criticism of officials, or that we are to stand by whatever officials say, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but is morally treasonable to the American public. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Barry. Do we have any additional comments on non-agenda items this evening? Please indicate by raising your hand. All right, seeing no additional comments this evening, we will move on to council and manager communications. We will start this evening with Member Rice.
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Traver.
Nothing from me either. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Wolfersberger.
Update tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Schwartz.
Nothing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gates.
Nothing from me. Thank you.
And Member Underhill.
Nothing at all. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Clerk Nelson.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Tarkowitz.
I'm gonna spoil it now. Couple things, just so you know, we're looking at going back in person in April. I may ask, because right now, we have nothing for the April 5th night, but we'll see when we can get John Courtney in here and work on the date on that. But and we will just be going back the way we were a little over a year ago. Just so everybody knows, is the liquor license for the St. Patrick's Day parade party at Grand River Brewing was not approved by Liquor Control. I'm not sure if Director McDonald has heard anything what Grand River's plan is. Scott, if you know something, if you want to let the council know.
I just had some brief email with Taylor down there. They do plan on moving forward, considering it part of the social district. I explained that would have all those rules where they couldn't serve. Basically, the customers would have to get their product and go outside. At this point, that's probably what they're going to do, but they were still discussing it. I expect to hear from her tomorrow.
The final thing I have is in your neighborhood, you should be seeing Granger recycle cans. They're getting ready to start April 5th. And so we're just working on a miscommunication that people didn't respond to us. So staff's working hard to make this kickoff good. So, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments at this time?
Are we still intending to close the road during that time? Do you know?
Yes, that's what you approved from 7 a.m. So we will still close the road, but it won't have to be fenced like a typical Liquor Control Commission event. So we'll be doing that on Wednesday morning, and then they'll be opening it up Wednesday night.
Okay.
All right. If that concludes comments, I want to thank everyone, and we will call this meeting adjourned. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.